that feel accessible and deeply human. Thank you, Jordan, for hitting recording there. Today, we're going to explore how storytelling, especially in digital spaces, can spark cultural change, build intergenerational understanding, and advance age inclusion in powerful ways. We're thrilled to have you here and look forward to an inspiring discussion. I'm going to let Jordan take it away from here.
Well, as we said, Christina, thank you so much for joining us. So we'll jump into questions because I know that Meg and I have just been eager to ask these questions. As we see you at conferences, we're never able to just like grill you. So now this is our chance. So right out of the gate, what made you become a gerontologist? Like what interested you in aging? And I mean, we're all aging, but like what made you say, I'm gonna go and do this?
All right. So that's a really good question. It's one that I get all the time. I've always enjoyed being around older adults. So growing up, I volunteered in, local nursing homes through school and church. So I was exposed to older adults at a very young age, and I just loved everything about it, just interacting with older residents and creating with them. We used to make, different arts and crafts and things like that. So it was just a really good time. So as I got older, I thought like, okay, I want to become a nurse. Like I just knew with everything in me, I was going to be a nurse one day and I was going to work with older adults. But you know how life is. It never really plays out exactly how we plan. So I had applied for a nursing program at Winston-Salem State University, did not get in the program. And one of my friends at the time, she told me about gerontology, which was a fairly new program that had just came on scene at Winston-Salem State. And so I learned about it. I talked to some of the professors within that program, and I was like, well, this really aligns with my interest, which is working with older adults. So I went ahead and changed my major to it. That's really how I became a gerontologist. What keeps me passionate about this work is that, like you just said, Jordan, aging is something that we're all experiencing. It's universal. It's like that one thing that everybody has in common. But it's also very layered, right? It's very personal, it's very unique. And so I'm interested in all of those layers, the social piece, the emotional piece that comes up, the cultural side, the misconceptions that people carry about aging. Um, the way ageism shows up in everyday life and how it can have an impact, in the workplace, in our families, just out and about in the community. All of that is really my sweet spot. So over the years, these other interests came about, but it all started, I'll say, in childhood, just with me enjoying being around older adults.
I think that's a familiar story for many of us on how we got into it. It's just those older, those interests, those co-generational relationships that we grow up with. So you're an unconventional gerontologist, though, because you have a YouTube show, which
Hmm.
is unconventional in general, but especially among gerontologists. And there is a link to, if you want to check out Gero What and all of Christina's videos, there is a link in the chat. So what made you like how do you start a YouTube channel and how did you come to start a YouTube channel?
Well, now I'll say it's real easy to start a YouTube channel, but like growing it is challenging. So that's just my honest opinion. But I launched it the same time that I launched Gerald Wood. So that was on my 30th birthday back in 2018. And I'll say
Wow.
originally I did not plan to make videos at all. Like my plan when I came up with Gerald Wood was to write, blog posts and share content on Instagram. But one of my friends at the time kept telling me, like, you should do videos. You got the personality for it. Like, people would love it. It would be so good. And I mean, I kept thinking about it like, And eventually, like, I realized, maybe I should tap into this because, it could open up another pathway for information to be shared in a way that can feel relatable and approachable, especially when you're talking about aging or, gerontology and all that comes with that. So that's where Real Homies Want to Know came from. Like, I wanted to, create content that felt like conversations people would actually have. Like, real homies want to know, why does this happen as we get older? Or what should I know about aging right now? And what assumptions have I been taught about aging that may not even be true? And so over the years, I've covered topics like, defining gerontology, what gerontologists do, intersectionality and why it matters. I've even partnered with other professionals as well. For example, my friend, the Dementia Guru, and we've talked about caregiving and millennials. I've even, interviewed individuals who shared their own personal experience. Someone, who had to receive a heart transplant in his mid 30s. I got to talk with him and share that. At this point, I mean, I have over 100 videos out there. I even used to have a series called Sitting Up in My Room. It's inspired by my
Yeah.
girl, Brandy Norwood. That's one of my favorite songs by her. But I would literally be sitting on my bed and I would talk about topics that I was personally dealing with. And I would ask my audience those questions about it and share, insight and reflection. And let me just say that when it came to all of this, at the beginning, I didn't know anything about creating videos. Like, I really felt like that's not my thing, but doing this, I've learned, like, okay, I have another side to creativity. Like, I had to learn how to record videos, how to edit, and how to, come up with transitions and make it visually appealing and all of the things. And I realized, like, I really enjoy doing this. It's fun. It can be, stressful at times because there are those moments where I can be a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist, I tell people. But, in those moments with just kind of clipping things and getting them just right, that can get a little stressful, but I really, really enjoy it. And so I'm glad that, that person encouraged me to do these videos. And I've gotten a lot of great response from them where people are learning and are like, I never really thought about this and how they can see themselves in the work that I'm putting out there.
So, Christina, I do remember, when we started Art Against Ageism, I started, so the first thing we did was start social media channels because it was in 2021. It was the best way to get out, for us to be out there because so many things were still closed. And I recall finding you on social media, and I'm curious, and I think, like, to me, I think social media is a really powerful way to impact, can be an impactful way to spread messages and enact social change. And I'm curious to know what you have found since you've started and you've done so much of it. What is your feeling about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think social media is a great tool that can really push change that we want to see, right? It can really challenge the different narratives that we've heard for so long and even help us unlearn things. Like, there's so much I've unlearned just from, different platforms that I follow on social media. What I love most about it, which I feel like I've tapped into, is the storytelling piece. And I feel that just like what you said at the top of this, Meg, as far as, storytelling being very powerful, I really do believe that. I feel like hearing personal stories from people on social media causes me to think. It causes me to like reflect on my own, journey. It causes me to think differently of how I see other individuals in the world. And so ultimately, I think although there are some cons to social media and it can fuel, negative things, I also believe there are a lot of pros when it comes to social media, and it can be very educational and it can really, provoke thought for a lot of people.
So, sorry, Christina. One of the things that you always talk about, or that you were just talking about, is having these conversations in your everyday life. And I'm gonna touch on the obvious. You are a Black woman, so I'm sure a lot of these conversations come up around being Black and aging. And Elder Black Voices is a thing that you are doing. It's I've been following it, and you've been doing a lot also around Aging While Black and working with Aging While Black. Shout out to Aging While Black. Amazing, amazing project. And I'm just like, it's so awesome to see because in one of the things that's always talked about in your identity is like there's different parts of your identity that are more in the forefront. And in the aging work, I'm so often thinking about how old I am and
Mm,
not in my race because that's not like, that's not a conversation that comes up. So
mhm.
often we're talking about, I'm in my 20s and just trying to advocate for youngers. But can you talk more about the story behind this, how you got started with it, and the conversations you're having every day in your life around this?
Yeah. So Black Elder Truths, it's a virtual storytelling series. And the whole idea behind it was to create space for Black older adults to share, their perspectives on aging in their own words. Nobody's speaking for them. It's coming straight out of the individual's mouth, right? And it was inspired by one of my close friends, Megan. Not you, Meg, but I have have a really close friend named Megan. She initially like encouraged me to start taking photos of Black older adults, and she had a whole idea about it. And then, through brainstorming, the storytelling component emerged, which involved me asking questions about, what brings you joy and what are some of the challenges that you've overcome or that you're currently experiencing, and what lessons have you learned, and what advice would you give younger generations. And what I've been seeing just with the few clips, I haven't even posted all of the conversations that I've had, but people are finding it like beneficial or uplifting or encouraging or, just these conversations alone. And that really was the goal. Like I had already said, storytelling is powerful, and it can challenge so much of the things that we've thought, were right, and cause us to look at it differently. And it can help us, gain understanding and really see people as human beings. I think so often conversations about aging, especially aging while Black, it centers statistics and deficits or problems. And I do think that those conversations matter. But I also want to capture, wisdom from those lessons that they've learned, and humor and grief and identity and just the everyday truths, the reality of growing older. And I want people to see that Black elders aging experience is layered. It's layered across the board, of course, but it's very layered. There's multiple things that are thrown into that. And so, I feel like their stories are worth listening to and worth preserving. And another thing, that really inspired me was just the importance of representation and how much that matters. That's honestly part of the reason Gerald What exists. I didn't really see blogs or platforms about aging coming from people of color, specifically Black people. And many people don't see aging reflected back to them in affirming or expensive ways. So I wanted to be someone who could contribute to that change. And I just think that that kind of helps, shape how we think about aging overall. I'll say one thing I'm really excited about is expanding this idea into aging truths. So it would be another series that would include people of all ages and backgrounds. So someone could be 5 years old and, share thoughts or perceptions about aging. So I'm really excited to see both series grow. And I don't know, one day maybe I could take it on the road.
I would love to see that. You are always welcome here in Baltimore. My grandfather and I talk about riding horses all the time because we both grew up riding horses, and so the way he grew up, and Meg and I are always talking about like one thing that everyone, for the most part, before they made the bikes that are now like the bikes with no pedals, but most of us learned how to ride the bike the same way. And
Mhm.
hearing different people's stories about how I rode a bike or how I learned to ride a bike, it's just so it's like it's something that we can all share in. It's the stories of aging that just
Yeah.
bring us all together, those beautiful moments. And I love that you're focused on not the issues because there are issues, especially as Maryland is the leading state for dementia in the country, and Baltimore is being one of the top three cities. And aging while Black is a challenge in some places and harder in some places than others. There is a platform for those issues, but also there is a platform for just talking about the lovely experiences of just aging in different cultures and highlighting that. So I love that that's the next iteration. I'm so excited to see that. And you have so many ideas. Um,
Mhm.
how do you, as you know, I'm sure we have so many people on 52 participants. Thank you all for joining. And for everyone that's going to be watching the recording, we all have ideas too. How do we start? If we want to do something like this, what are the steps to do it, and how do you find the gumption to do it?
I think first, just starting with your why. So, why do I want to do this, right? For me, like I said, my why is representation matters, and I want to educate people on all the things, right? So, always start with your why, zoom in on that, and figure out the purpose of what you're doing, and then so you'll start there, and then of course you figure out like, do I want to be on LinkedIn? Do I want to be on TikTok? Do I want to be on YouTube? Do I just want to send newsletters and capture everyone's email addresses and go that route? Really think through what works best for you, and your lifestyle and what you're, comfortable with. And then also, as you're kind of in those brainstorming phases, think about what's going to be true to you. I was talking to one of my good friends a while back who, shared the importance of not feeling the need to like hop on these trending trains and do all the things that everybody is doing, but really just being authentic and doing like, what fits you and your personality. And then of course, the basic steps as far as creating a handle, If you are gonna, tap into the Instagram or the YouTube or TikTok or all the other, it's so many things out there now, but coming up with the handle, all the things like get as creative as you want or not. Don't feel like you've got to do the most because you don't. That's what goes back to just being authentic to you, right? And then what I do, and it could be different for other people. I like to write things out or type things out. Because, like you said, we all have so many ideas. So it's like I will, you know, jot down all of my ideas and figure out which one am I most passionate about in that moment. Like which one do I really just want to put a heavy focus on in that moment? Which one do I feel like in today's climate is a need, So if your focus is advocating for family caregivers, as an example, that's a need that is of today. If you had all these other ideas, but it's like, this is the one that's really sticking out to me. This is the one that I'm hearing the most about. This is the one that's near and dear to my heart. Then zoom in on that, start there, and just build as you go. But don't feel like, and this is me sharing the things that I've learned along the way. Like, don't feel like you've got to stick with the same thing all the time. If today you wake up and you want to talk about family caregiving or ageism in the workplace or whatever, cool. And tomorrow you may wake up and decide that you want it to be a completely different topic. Don't, you know, feel like you have to be stuck in one area. I think we get the best results from the work that we put out when we don't box ourselves in. And don't feel like you've got to do something every single day or every week. Like, again, let it fit you and your lifestyle and, what's going to work best for you. Am I answering the question or should I go?
No,
Like,
you
that's how I answer
answered
the
the
question?
question. That was
So
perfect.
Okay.
I do have a question related. So I'm assuming you don't have a background in marketing, do you? Because you don't need it.
No,
I don't feel, yeah, you don't need
no.
it to start social media, right? So, I mean, I think you do such a great job. It seems like you might have a background in marketing or communications because you do such a great job, and you seem like you're probably a natural talent at it, right? But you did say that you write things down, so I am curious. Like it does that I was going to ask you about how you did that because you do it so well. And writing, do you ever like, how did you get like, what made you think I can totally, that I can do this? What made you think that you could get in front? Because I think a lot of people are really afraid to get in front of the camera themselves. Me,
Yeah,
I am. But
yeah.
so what do you think it was that made you think that, yeah, I can do this?
It's gonna sound basic. I feel like we've all heard this before of getting outside of your comfort zone. To this day, even us having this conversation, I am outside of my comfort zone. People find that so hard to believe. Like I'll tell people like I'm an introvert. I'm
Really?
more comfortable behind the scenes, but somehow throughout this entire process, I'm constantly being like put out in the front. And every time I do it, I am uncomfortable, right? But I always go back to my why. So what may look easy to other people, the behind the scenes is me sweating and me like, kind of hyping myself up, like you're doing a good job and, all the things. So sometimes it's just going to come down to getting outside of your comfort zone, and that's going to look different for everybody. But yeah, for me, it was getting in front of the camera. And I mean, like I had mentioned earlier, like there was a friend at the time who strongly encouraged it. They wouldn't get off of the topic of me creating these videos. So I would say getting around people who will also help push you outside of your comfort zone. My friend Ashley, the dementia guru I mentioned earlier, we this had to be like 2021, 2022. We started 2Gs, right? And we were
Mhm.
going to do our first Instagram live. And I was like, Ashley, all right, now this is where I gotta feel like I need to draw a line. This is uncomfortable. We're gonna go live. Cause hey, when I do my videos, I can edit and I
Right.
can clip where I mess up or how many times I say and all the things. Like I can get it to look however I want it. When you're live, you are live. So it was like uncomfortable, but like it was her that, hey, I'm uncomfortable too, but she gave us both that push to do something that neither one of us were like fully comfortable with doing, but we were like, we gotta do this. Like, we gotta get this information out. We gotta get our personalities out there. We need this representation. So, you know, it's not something we want to do, be uncomfortable, but depending on what it is and how strong of a need it is and how passionate you are about it, sometimes that's what it's gonna be drawn down to is you just getting uncomfortable.
And
Thank
your like best friend cheerleader is all in the chat.
She
Um,
is, let me
Ashley.
see.
Yes, thank you, Ashley.
um,
We
how
love and we
important
love your personality. Sorry, Jordan.
No, I was to say I love you two together. Whenever I see you
Yeah,
two
so do
together, it
I.
just like brings me so. And I have Meg. I find it to be really important to have a partner driving you to do this. And you two do a lot of work together, but your work is separate. I mean, you both have
Mhm.
your own thing that you're doing, but you're doing
Yeah.
it together and encouraging each other and showing up for each other and each other's things and in each other's comments. And I think one of the things I'd love for you to touch on is in social media,
Mhm.
when you're trying to get a platform, how important it is to have to collaborate. Because social media is
Yes.
not a solo game. You can't post without having building a community of sharers and likers and commenters. So
Yep.
please tell me more about how you built that community, how you sought out people who are like, I want them to comment on myself, or was it natural? Because you're an introvert, so I imagine a lot of it was intentional.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, really what you said, I mean, that's like the whole purpose of social media. The makers of it want you to build community. I mean, for other reasons, of course, but like they want you to build community. And so like, when I first got started, people would reach out like, "Oh, I love this," and I would just kind of keep the conversation going. Even with like Ashley, she reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm starting my page as well," and like we had a phone conversation and we would, connect with each other. So I'm very intentional. I don't you can find some people within the social media world who, make connections, but there's like other motives that may not be to really like build community. But I'm very intentional with who I connect with. And a lot of the people that I've come across on social media, I mean, yeah, when I see them in person, you would think that we've always known each other outside of social media. You would think like even with y'all, you would think like we've always known each other. But I think that just kind of speaks to just connecting with people, sharing other people's work that you are like, oh, I want who follows me to see this work because it's so good and it can really be helpful to other people or whatever. So I'm very intentional and that intentionality has just carried me all these 8 years. where I've been able to, establish some really good connections with people. And even outside of social media, just being like, going to conferences, or different, workshops and sharing, and kind of having that courage to talk to people that you don't know and really like put yourself out there, because that can be challenging to like talk about the work that you do because you don't want to feel like you're boasting or it's all about me. But it's also
Right.
like, but I think we're allowed to toot our own horns and say, like, hey, this is what I'm working on. This is the impact that it's had on people. You should check it out. And when you do that, the connection that you can make from there and the other, people start to follow you or reach out via email. So you have, again, that community that you've built just from being intentional about, who you're speaking with and who you're sharing it with. And I'm like, I'm just always, mindful of how I connect with people because, you being a busy person, being an introvert, and all the other things that can like suck up your energy, you're like just conscious of who you're giving that out to and how you're giving it out. So, yeah, just be intentional about the connections and don't think that it all has to be through social media. Keep in mind the people that you interact with regularly when you're just out and about.
Yeah, you can even take advantage of like a chat in a webinar that you join and drop in the chat all the things that you do and connect with people. So, like, I don't see this
Exactly.
chat moving enough. You do have to, you can meet people IRL, collaborate, connect with people. So feel free if you're doing something really awesome and you want people to collaborate and share with what you're doing, please drop it in the chat.
And you just reminded me.
Jeanette is always in the chat in everything, and I love it.
um,
I love
Well, you
her.
just reminded me, like another way to do that is so another route, um things like this, like what you just mentioned, and people getting a chance to like interact with each other. Old School, which is another organization that I, get to be connected with. They have their office hours on Wednesdays, and they talk a lot about ageism, right? And so even just connecting on that level where you're getting to meet people, especially if this is like your area of interest, where you get to meet other people and hear what they're doing, you don't have to talk. It might be more comfortable just to send them a chat message, right? But yeah, like, and then, within this space, within those other spaces, figuring, learning what else is out there and other opportunities to connect. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Jordan.
So I have, unless you have something pressing, Jordan, can I ask another
Well, I was
question?
just
Is that
gonna say, the new executive director of Old School is in
Hmm.
in here in the audience at some
Oh,
point.
let me.
Alessandro, I see his smiling face. He has such a nice smile, so I just wanted to give a shout out there, as
Hey.
well as some other old schoolers. I guess we should call them old
Oh,
schoolers.
I
I
see
like
Ryan.
that.
Okay,
Ryan
So
and
yeah.
Ryan.
Ashton? I see Ashton
So
too.
thanks so much
Hello,
for joining. And
Ashton.
Old School is a great platform. Definitely, when we were starting out, Meg was always in the office hours. So yeah, definitely a great place to start. Please, Meg, go ahead.
Oh, so no, I just want, so obviously we know you're a gerontologist. At what point what was the point at which that you became very interested or aware of ageism and you realized you wanted to advocate for tackling ageism?
That is a good question. Now, I first learned about ageism in undergrad. I still have this book to this day. It was God, I wish I could remember. I think it was like a social gerontology book or something. But within the first chapter, and this was back in 2007, 2008. Within the first chapter of this textbook, there was ageism. Now, there wasn't an in-depth, discussion about it, but there was this definition of ageism. And I do not know why that term stuck with me. I don't know why it really followed me throughout like my journey in college and thereon. Like it just stayed with me, but it wasn't until maybe like 2016, 2017. I was in grad school and which was at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And I had a professor who and let me just say, this course had nothing to do with ageism. It was like a business class, but focused on aging. But she shared Ashton Applewhite's TED Talk on ageism. And I just really enjoyed it. And I was like, hey, I know that word. Like, I didn't like study it. I didn't try to learn more about ageism, but it was just a term that really stayed with me, and just followed me. It was something that always stuck out. And periodically, there would be certain conversations where I would remember that term, but it wasn't like I put a lot of emphasis on it. But when we watched that TED Talk, I was like, I want to learn more about this. Like I really want to go a bit deeper. And so by the end of 2017, when I was like thinking about launching Gerald What, that was when I was like, as I'm like thinking about my friends and my family, I can see how ageism shows up. And it has a negative impact on us, but I don't really see like I don't think we are really paying attention to what that impact is. And so that was kind of where the passion and the desire to really focus on ageism came from because I was seeing it show up. Like after you watch that TED talk and you get these examples and Ashton's perspective and all the things on it, it's like a whole nother picture is painted and you start to see it more clearly like in your own life. So that's kind of how it came about. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I need to give a shout out to Gray Panthers NYC. They partnered with us on the support and promotion of this event. So thank you. And I think we have a lot of folks from Gray Panthers here today. I think Jack Kupferman is on, and I can't say. I know we have a few folks. So say hi in the chat if you can, guys. So do we want to open
Um,
it up to questions, Jordan?
no, I want to ask you two more questions. Two more,
Okay.
because I realize we're coming up on time and I could just do this for forever. Um, Ageism, you mentioned showing it up in your life. Let's get real.
hmm
Tell us about when ageism became real for you. Like, when were you like, oh, this isn't just something I'm studying. Like, this is actually a real problem, and this is terrible.
Oh man. I cannot pinpoint like the exact time. But I can say just over the years, let's say it was 2017 because that was when I saw Ashton's TED Talk, right? And over the years, like since then, there are just certain things that really stand out to me. I mean, I'll say like even the other day, I was looking in the mirror and like I saw some little lines right here, right? Which are really, they come in when I smile. But I just, for whatever reason, like really zoomed in on those and I felt myself like getting kind of critical. And I just kind of had to be like, chill out. Like this is years of you smiling. That is why like you have these little lines here. It's okay. Um, and there's been times that I've been on myself, like with my hair, it's near and dear to me, but there were moments where just like with hormone fluctuations, because that comes, being a woman and getting older, where, I was experiencing hair thinning, and then that made me like miss like my younger years, when I didn't have those challenges. And so I can say that throughout this time, I keep seeing it show up as it relates to beauty, right? As it relates to the beauty standards and what people deem as beautiful, which is like the absence of wrinkles or a full head of hair, like in my, case. And so, within that, I'm, of course, like more aware of when it's happening. One of the things I am really big on is that I talk about aging. I talk about ageism and how, the way we communicate, like our language, if it's negative, how that can have an impact on our lives. But what I also want to make clear is that in doing all of that, I don't want people to think that it means that I am trying to paint this picture perfect life of like what aging should be. I don't want people to think that these conversations that we have mean you should be, skipping outside in a field of flowers, because that is not aging. Like, there are moments where I could just be real and say it could suck getting older. That's just the honest truth. That is the reality. Aging is very complex, and like I said, it's layered. And so within those layers, when we experience grief, whether we're grieving what once was, whether it was hair, whether it was changes that you've experienced with your weight and it not being what it once was, your skin, how you digest food, like all of the things, those changes are real and they are not always fun. And I want to make that clear that when we are challenging ageism, that we are not saying that things should be perfect and that you should have a positive, you know, view of aging. It's good to have a positive view, but I think it ebbs and flows just depending on where life is. For me, when I'm having those moments where I am being ageist towards myself, whether, it's the example I just gave of the other day or what have you, I'm more aware of it, and I can call it out and shift the way I'm looking at it. It may not instantly make me feel better, but what it does do is make me aware of what may be about to come out of my mouth that could then, somewhere down the line, shift how I continue to view getting older.
Thank you. I had another question, but that was such a great answer. Wow. Meg always makes fun of me because I'm always like wrinkles and what happened to my hair? And it's a real like thing that you look in the mirror and like,
Yeah, yeah.
wow. Um, so let's do some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, we've got so many people that can ask so many different questions that we haven't thought of. So, please feel
We do
free
have
to,
one in the chat. We have one in the
yeah, is
chat.
that Michelle?
Great.
Michelle wants to know, do you think there are cultures we can emulate that look at aging differently?
Oh, that's a good question. So one of the books, what is it? Breaking the Age Code. Dr. Becca Levy, she talks about like when she was in Japan, I believe it was, and the way that culture viewed getting older, even how they view older adults and the way they like celebrate older adults in aging. I think that we could tear a page out of that book and apply that. I think that, you know, there are I feel like, like in the Black culture, we reverence elders, but there are times where, that may not even be the most positive, just depending on what may have taken place within that. So, I mean, you could look at Japan, you could look at your own family and maybe not think about emulating another culture, but think about what you want it to look like within your own culture. What would, if you could change something, if you could shift something, what would that be? Like, what would that look like? To where, what was the full question? Oh, to where people could look at aging differently, right? So, I mean, yeah, there's the example of Japan, but then there's the example of really thinking for yourself, and as a whole, what things could we benefit from?
And Michelle, by the way, Michelle Arno is the person who asked the question. She's with Gray Panthers NYC, by the way. She also followed that up with that Japan has a holiday called Respect for Elders Day and that it
Yeah.
coincides with Grandparents' Day. So,
Yep.
And
oh,
then
Ashton has a follow-up. Also, Japan also has a tradition called Kenriki. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. To celebrate turning 60, which symbolizes a person's rebirth and completion of a full cycle of the zodiac calendar. I love that.
Okay.
I'm about to turn 60 myself, and I am going to look that up.
I like that.
Yay.
um, I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to ask my question.
You are so funny, Jordan.
So I find this to be a thing that happens as an advocate, as an activist, like things that are happening now kind of intersect and jump into like what we're all the things that we care about now. Is there
Mhm.
anything that's like current events, things that are happening now that is starting to like, get your wheels turning that you're interested in that intersects with aging that you never even thought about intersects with aging? I mean, for me personally, it's like the Middle East war and conflict in the Gaza Strip, and I've been thinking about aging and how that relates. So, like, is it global warming? Is it something that like you're like, huh, aging? Never really thought about this. Or is it even just like your activism with civil rights? So yeah, I'm very interested to see like what's Christina thinking about today?
Lately, I feel like it'll just kind of like spiral, but it started with the increase in gas prices. You know how like at nighttime when things are calm and everything is quiet, right? And but like your brain is still going, but you can just hear it louder because everything's like settled. And honestly, this one might have been like earlier this week. I thought about how, the increase in groceries, the increase in gas prices, and how a lot of people are feeling that impact because there is not necessarily an increase in income. And so it's like, what is that gonna look like in a year? Shoot, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, what is that gonna look like for older people and then also for people of people who are younger than 60, right? What is that going to look like for those individuals and how is this going to have an impact on their aging experience? And it's like it's scary because we all fall in that category where we're feeling the impact of it, where it's like I'm spending more money. But again, that money is not coming in at the rate that it's going out. And if I've got to be able to eat and I've got to be able to have air conditioning because it's hot outside and just all the things, am I going to still be able to get my medications? Am I still going to be able to, afford a doctor's visit when I get sick? Am I still, if you're a caregiver, am I still going to be able to provide care for my loved one and for me? And I mean, those are like, to me, in my mind, like to the scale that you're covering, Jordan, it's like, wow, that's really broad. But I'm like really just zooming in on, they're not little things, but they're like everyday things that we're not really thinking about that I feel like we are feeling it, but we just don't know how that is shaping our aging experience. Like we don't know what the outcome of all of this is truly going to look like. And that is something that I've been thinking a lot about. And not just for myself. Like I'm thinking about the person who was making minimum wage, and really trying to figure this thing out. And there's no answers right now. So, yeah, that's where Christina's brain is right now.
Those are real issues. And being a caregiver at this time, I mean, like, or you have kids and you're trying to take care of mom and you're trying to make it all work. And yeah, these are real things and this is why this question's so relevant because like we don't think about that. We think about our own pockets, but you know, thinking about that it's a real issue. And this is why we have gerontologists to bring those issues to the forefront. We do have some interesting questions and some conversations going on in the chat. Um, one question was around celebrations and of milestones of or celebrating the passage into elderhood. Um, what do you think the kind of features might be in a celebration of elderhood? What would you like to see in your celebration into elderhood?
That's a good question. When it comes to celebrations, I guess birthday celebrations, how people say, like, oh, I don't really want to make a big deal about my birthday. I feel like I've been that way, but like, I'm 2 years away from 40. That's not necessarily elderhood, but I'm thinking about it like I want to make a big deal about that. So what would that look like? Would for me, and I think for other people, I think it's really good to reflect on just life in general. Reflections and highlighting those reflections, and even, thinking about like the hurdles that you've had to jump over. I think that would be a way, that would be what it would look like for me. I think a lot of people look at it that way. I did see where someone mentioned birthday cards in here, or getting rid of the over the hill products and focus on celebrating more birthdays. So I teach part-time, and one of the things that I've had my students do is create anti-ageist birthday cards. And I love it so much because they get very, very creative. Somebody said you're glowing and growing, like happy
Ooh.
birthday. Like that was what it said. And I was like, ooh, I love this. Like, make this for me, please, But like, what I love most about it is one, they get very creative. So they get to, tap into that creative side, but also just the language that they use in those birthday cards. Like, and just seeing, like, yeah, you don't have to tear a person down for getting older. Like, there's all of the cards that they made were like empowering and they were encouraging. So I would also say that those would be some of the features that, could be part of celebrating a person, who's moving into elderhood, like empowering that individual and encouraging them and uplifting them, reflecting, making, having reflections about that person or about yourself of, the things that you've been able to do. And it's not necessarily like on a large scale, but the reflection of, for the past however many years, you've always greeted me with a warm hello. And I want to reflect on that because, it does this for me, or that is a contribution to the community. So, it's nothing that has to be large, like major, but just small things and really making those reflections. And like I said, just encouraging and uplifting the person, I think are great features.
I love
I'm
that.
so,
All right. Well,
I think it's
whenever elderhood happens, we'll make that celebration and we'll make that happen.
And
Um,
look, y'all can do it when I turn 40. Because listen,
right.
don't.
And so I think, do we have time for one more question? I don't know. I feel like we're coming up
we
on
do have
time.
one more question. We do
I
have
We do
one.
have one more question. So I actually wrote to the comment to that last question of this is the last question. And it is from Patrick O'Leary. And I feel like this is the great last question because it's relevant to what we do and at Art Against Ageism. Um, so your perspective as a gerontologist on the arts, and I'll add, Patrick, if it's okay, I'm going to add to your question because we always talk about arts, but it really creativity.
Mhm,
And because art is sometimes broad and nebulous, but creativity in itself, and everyone's naturally creative. Some people say
mhm.
they're not artists. Anyway, I'll ask the question. Creativity and its impact on mental health.
I love that question. Um, Excuse me, especially as it relates to aging. And because oftentimes, if we're like speaking of older adults specifically, mental health is oftentimes overlooked. But then broadly, when we're looking at people across the lifespan in certain ways, there are a lot of people who misunderstand what mental health is. I think people hear the word mental health and they automatically think that it's about certain conditions or what have you. But mental health is like, what are we doing to mentally be healthy? And one of those ways is being creative. I think that there are long-term effects and there's studies, now I can't call them out to you, but there's studies that show like being creative can have a positive impact on our mental health. I know for me, if I'm just doodling and something I do regularly, like that kind of helps me, especially in a moment of like stress. That helps me if I am doing karaoke, right? I'm singing. Okay. Is it the best sounding? No. But what is it doing? Bringing me joy. It's taking my mind off of everything else that's going on around us, right? So that can have a positive impact on it. So my main thing I say that is like finding something that you enjoy doing that is creative. I like that you said, Jordan, that everyone doesn't think that they are like an artist or like a creative person. I think it's just because of what we've been taught that creativity is or an artist is. We don't, feel like we can identify with that. But because art is so broad, it is something that we tap into regularly, especially if you're coming up with reels. If you post a reel on social media, you have now been creative. You are now an artist. So doing those things, taking the time to see how that made you feel, whether it was singing, whether it was drawing, whether it was writing, doing poetry, whatever it is, if we like took the time to really see how it makes us feel and how it can lower our stress, how it can help us with our outlook on aging, because when we're not stressed, we can see things a lot more clearly, how it could even have an impact on sleep. Like when I create the things that it does for me, it boosts my confidence. Like it's like, oh, I want to do something else. Oh, I gotta do more. Like, so just having that boost of confidence can do wonders for our mental health. So I'm a fan of arts, especially as it relates to aging and mental health. And I'm always gonna, advocate for programs that are related to arts, because I do believe that it can have a positive impact on our aging experience. That was a really good question,
That was a
Patrick.
really great answer.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And on that note, I guess we'll wrap up. So I think I have some final words, but I'll let Meg have the last word. I want to thank you all so much for joining.
Yes,
And
thank you.
I want to thank you all so much for joining. This is a really awesome opportunity for us to just like bring in amazing voices and share it with some awesome people. So thank you so much for joining. We will have the chat out and available in some manner of time. And tune in for we'll have more of these. So please tune in on the next one. Christina, thank you so much. It was
Thank
an
you.
amazing conversation,
Thank
and I can't wait to give
you.
you a big hug next time I see you.
I know. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Christina.
I enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.